Welcome, rational thinkers and champions of evidence-based reasoning, to the Free of Faith podcast. This is the place where we dare to peel back the comforting but opaque layers of faith-based claims and expose their logical shortcomings. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of those unchallenged assumptions you hear all the time, that people choose their religion freely. But is that really true? Let's unpack this. Let's begin with something easy to understand: language. Imagine someone claiming that every child chooses the language they speak. We all know that's absurd. A child born in France learns French not because they evaluated Spanish, Korean, and Swahili and made a rational selection, but because they absorbed the language spoken by their parents and community. Language is inherited, not chosen. The same is overwhelmingly true of religion. Think about it. Children born into Hindu families in India rarely grow up to be devout Catholics. Kids raised in Saudi Arabia almost never become Buddhists. A child raised in a conservative Christian town in Australia is unlikely to convert to Sikhism after reading comparative theology at age 7. The odds are stacked. Religious belief overwhelmingly follows geographical and cultural boundaries, not open-minded choice. And that brings us to a serious theological problem. If an all-powerful, loving God exists and genuinely wants every human being to know Him, why does He make Himself more available in some places than in others? If salvation depends on recognizing the correct faith, shouldn't everyone have the same access to it, regardless of where or when they were born? Let's imagine a just God, one who is not only omnipotent and omniscient, but also fair. Would such a God allow billions of people to be born into cultural environments where belief in this true God is extremely unlikely? Would He set eternal stakes and then distribute the relevant information unevenly? That does not resemble divine justice. It resembles a cosmic game of roulette. This becomes even more troubling when you consider a child raised in an insular religious society. Let's say she is taught that her religion is the one true path and that all others are false. She lives in a culture that punishes doubt and shames questioning. She might suppress genuine curiosity just to survive emotionally or socially. If she never hears a compelling case for any other belief system, can we honestly say she freely chose her faith? This is where many believers turn to theological justifications. Some say, well, God judges the heart, or God reveals Himself through nature and conscience. But if that were truly sufficient, why do missionaries travel the world? Why does your faith community invest in outreach if everyone already has what they need? It sounds like theology is being revised to avoid confronting its most uncomfortable implications. Let's break it down. If belief is the basis for salvation or eternal judgment, and if belief is mostly inherited, then judgment is effectively based on birthplace. That is not free will. That is cultural determinism. It is no fairer than giving an exam in English to students who have only ever spoken Swahili, and then failing them for not knowing the answers. And yet, the rhetoric of free will persists. Christian apologists will often argue that God allows a diversity of beliefs because He wants people to have choices. But those choices are meaningless if access to them is uneven. If you grow up in a remote village with no exposure to competing worldviews, you have no real choices. The best explanation for location-based beliefs is that religious belief is largely the result of cultural conditioning. Religion provides belonging, purpose, and certainty. It tells people they are part of something special. And once belief becomes part of your identity, letting go is emotionally expensive. Rituals like prayer, singing, and group worship are not proof of divine favor. They are social technologies. They foster unity. They create emotional highs. They help people feel synchronized. These practices feel powerful because they are neurologically real. But emotional power does not equal metaphysical truth. Let's go further. Sacred texts did not fall from the sky. They were written, edited, and compiled by fallible human beings, many with political or theological agendas. What people now claim to be divinely authored is often the result of historical accident and institutional consolidation. And when you remove the specific doctrines, you find that religions orbit the same emotional needs, such as fear of death, longing for justice, desire for meaning, and the need for social cohesion. These are emotional fingerprints, not divine. The more we learn about the human brain, the more obvious it becomes that religious belief is not typically the result of logical reasoning. It is an emotional adaptation. It works because it satisfies deep psychological needs, such as belonging, safety, and understanding. That is why beliefs cluster along cultural lines. People are not starting from scratch and reasoning their way to God. They are absorbing what is modeled for them from birth. Now, this does not mean people cannot change their minds. Some do. Some people critically examine their inherited beliefs and walk away. But statistically, most people die in the religion of their parents. That is not evidence of free will. That is evidence of social inertia. So, when someone insists that everyone has the same chance, or that faith is a personal choice, we need to stop and ask, according to what evidence? The global patterns say otherwise. Religion follows geography, not reason. And if you believe in a God who would condemn someone for choosing the wrong religion, then the geography of belief becomes an indictment that God is either unjust or absent. But he cannot be fair and also responsible for the uneven distribution of religious knowledge. We need to stop pretending belief is a neutral choice. It is time to stop ignoring the overwhelming role that culture, emotion, and environment play. Faith is not typically the result of independent reasoning. More often, it is an emotional and cultural inheritance packaged in comforting stories and reinforced by community pressure. If this conversation has sparked some questions or even some discomfort, that's a good thing. Questioning is the first step toward clarity. Don't settle for easy answers or platitudes. Dive deeper, explore further, and demand evidence. Head over to Free of Faith to read the full article and join the discussion. Let's keep this conversation going, because the pursuit of truth doesn't stop at questioning. It's about finding answers that actually make sense. Thank you for tuning in to the Free of Faith podcast, where we expose the logical failings of faith and celebrate the clarity that comes with reason. Until next time, stay skeptical, stay curious, and remember, rationality always outperforms faith. Engage reality, and I'll see you soon.